Hello everyone, welcome to the Turkish Foreign Policy course. Today we will continue with Chapter 7, Public Diplomacy and Soft Power in Recent Turkish Foreign Policy. Today we will start with Public Diplomacy and Soft Power. Then we'll continue with Public Diplomacy and the restructuring of some state institutions in Turkey. After that, we will talk about the Yunus Emre Institute as part of Turkish public diplomacy and Turkish soft power, and lastly, we will discuss the new Turkish institutions on diaspora diplomacy, foreign aid, and humanitarian diplomacy. Let's start with public diplomacy and soft power. The ruling party attached importance to the implementation of modern and institutional public diplomacy in Turkish foreign policy and the institutionalization of public diplomacy in the 2000s. There are two key dynamics of this. The first is the party's policy of presenting itself as a model to the world, especially to the Middle Eastern countries. Secondly, the commercial and economic performance of Turkey, which was the 16th biggest economy in the world in the 2000s, allowed the application of a public diplomacy which requires a high level of spending. Although public diplomacy is based upon soft power tools, its implementation requires hard dollars. In this context, Turkey built and promoted new institutions and new policies for the sake of international public policy. The Yunus Emre Institute was established in 2007 with an aim to carry out cultural diplomacy as a form of public diplomacy. In 2010, the Prime Ministry Coordinating Office of Public Diplomacy was established. Also, in 2010, the Presidency for Turks Abroad and Related Communities were established to carry out the diaspora diplomacy. All these efforts and accomplishments have been made possible by what is known as soft power. Turkey has tried to implement assertive policies in the last decade and strived to become a global actor in the international arena. Toward this end, Turkey has deployed some soft power tools in public diplomacy rather than conducting traditional diplomacy. Ahmet Davutoğlu, as the architect of this policy vision, used the discourse of a multi-track foreign policy to define his approach in foreign policy. Now let's continue with public diplomacy and the restructuring of some state institutions in Turkey. Public diplomacy institutions are the new actors in Turkish foreign policy, and they have served as the new channels and mechanisms for defining and implementing the recent policies. These new institutions have established the civilian aspect of Turkish foreign policy that helps conduct public diplomacy through soft power activities from a social perspective rather than through policy practices of a hard power approach. The newly established public diplomacy institutions are also a product of the restructuring of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs has been restructured in order to make it more compatible with the newly defined foreign policy objectives and the changing global system. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs has been reorganized with the latest amendment of its Organizational Act that was adopted on July 13, 2010. With this act and the new soft policy aims, 10 new general directorates were inaugurated within the ministry. Among these, the General Directorate of Information, the General Directorate of Overseas Promotion and Cultural Relations, and the Deputy General Directorate of Cultural Diplomacy may be singled out because of their importance and relevance to public diplomacy. The Public Diplomacy Coordination Office of the Prime Ministry was later renamed the Office of Public Diplomacy. The Coordination Office was established with a presidential memorandum on January 30, 2010, under the Prime Ministry of Turkey for the purpose of influencing and guiding the international community. The Justice and Development Party governments have claimed to support public diplomacy more strongly than ever in Turkish foreign policy. This policy choice can be considered as a strategic one in terms of their Middle East policy. The Justice and Development Party has engaged in Middle East politics with its new approach to politics with the aim of reshaping and reinventing the historical legacy of the Ottoman Empire. Now let's talk about the Yunus Emre Institute as part of Turkish public diplomacy and Turkish soft power. The Yunus Emre Institute is a relatively young organization compared to its counterparts in some other countries. For example, the Alliance Française was established in 1883, the British Council in 1934, and the Goethe Institute in 1951. The Yunus Emre Institute was established in 2009, and it is the first Turkish organization to conduct cultural diplomacy. The institute aims at expanding the cultural influence of Turkey in the Balkans, Africa, and the Middle East. The institute tries to achieve these objectives through introducing and promoting Turkish language, history, culture, and art around the world. Although the Yunus Emre Institute operates as a non-governmental organization according to its bylaws, it is affiliated with both the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Ministry of Culture. This makes it a government-sponsored organization rather than an independent enterprise. The fields of activity of the Yunus Emre Institute can be divided into two groups: educational activities based on teaching Turkish as a second language, and cultural and art-related activities. Teaching the Turkish language has gradually become the main duty and function of the centers. This is in line with the objective of making Turkish a world language, and in fact, this strategy has been part of Turkey's aspiration to become a global actor. Our last topic of the course is the new Turkish institutions on diaspora diplomacy, foreign aid, and humanitarian diplomacy. Two further concepts should be introduced regarding a state's public diplomacy: diaspora diplomacy and humanitarian diplomacy. The communities living outside their home countries are called diasporas. Diaspora diplomacy is basically the use of diaspora communities as a foreign policy instrument. States aim at turning them into effective political actors in their host countries by following the policy of developing relations with diaspora communities. It is called foreign aid diplomacy or humanitarian diplomacy when states provide emergency humanitarian aid in cases of natural disasters such as earthquakes or floods. There are two important institutions through which Turkey implements its diaspora diplomacy and humanitarian diplomacy: the Presidency for Turks Abroad and Related Communities, and the Turkish Cooperation and Coordination Agency. The Presidency for Turks Abroad and Related Communities was established to perform functions related to Turkish citizens living abroad and to find solutions to their problems, as well as to carry out activities to develop social, cultural, and economic relations with the cognate and related communities. And the Turkish Cooperation and Coordination Agency was established in 1992 as an organization affiliated with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to provide technical assistance to countries in Caucasia and Central Asia that gained independence after the collapse of the Soviet Union. So, this is the end of our program for Chapter 7 of the Turkish Foreign Policy course. Don't forget that you can always go back and watch our previous programs. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.